Good morning. I'm Anita Thurmond, and I'm today's worship associate here at Horizon. We are excited to welcome you to our worship service this morning. We're so glad to have you with us today. Whether you're joining us in person or virtually, whether you're here for the first time, or whether you've been here longer than you can remember, here at Horizon, we welcome people of all faiths and of no faith in particular. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, you are welcome among us. Oops.
So as always, folks, I'd like to draw your attention to the inserts in your order of service. So please, if you feel called to attend the Beltane celebration, please do, and please go ahead and share a note to our bridgers. Our call to worship this morning is called Shaking the Tree, and it comes from the writings of Jean Lohman. She writes, "Vine and branch were connected in this world of sound and echo, figure and shadow, the leaves contingent, roots pushing up against the earth. An apple belongs to itself, to stem and tree, to air that claims it, then ground. Connections, balance, each motion changes another. Precarious, hanging together. We don't know what our lives support, and we touch in the least shift of breathing. Each holy thing is borrowed. Everything depends." And with that, let us deepen into the spirit of worship together.
The chalice lighting reading this morning is by Florence Caplow. We kindle this flame, honoring the doorways of our souls, the windows through which we gaze at one another, the balconies where we catch glimpses of the sky, the thresholds we stand on this morning, wondering, hoping, fearing, dreaming. And you may wish to stand for the affirmation. I hope. Love is the doctrine of our church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in harmony with the earth. Thus do we covenant together. And if you will remain standing, the opening hymn is number 1009 in the Teal hymnal, Meditation on Breathing.
You may remain on whichever part is your favorite, whichever one feels good to you. The drone, the melody, or come in on the descant, and then drop out as the parts drop out. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in,
I breathe in peace.
when I breathe out,
When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
when I breathe in,
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace.
when I breathe out,
When
I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe.
All right, folks. So at this time, I'd like to invite our young people to come forward. And if you have brought a donation for MetroCrest, will you pass that to the edge of an aisle? Try to make sure a young person gets it on their way up. Okay, yeah. Thank you, friends. So the story that we're going to share happened a long, long time ago, and this comes from the Jewish tradition. So in a small town in Eastern Europe, there was a man, and he was a really nice man, but he was also really curious, which is a good thing a lot of the time, but it sometimes got him into some trouble. And the way it got him into trouble is that whenever he heard a story about someone in the community, he wanted to share it. He could not help it. And so he was a businessman, and whenever he heard, a story, or if he, heard something he wasn't sure it was true, but he wanted to share, he would go ahead and tell that to his friends and his customers. And he loved the attention that he got. Sometimes he would add some detail, right? It was fun for him. And he kind of knew that this wasn't the best thing to do, but it was really tempting. And most of the time he thought, well, these stories are true, so what's the harm? One day he found out something really weird about another businessman in the town, and he decided to share that with his colleagues, and they told it to their friends, and they told it to people that they knew, and it went all around their little town. And the unhappy businessman went to the rabbi of the town, and he talked to the rabbi, and he said, "Rabbi, I am so worried. I'm afraid that my business is going to be ruined. Everybody is saying these things about me. My name and my reputation are in trouble." And so the rabbi got in touch with the nice man who loved the stories, and he thought he would just ask him about this, right? And he shared with the man how devastated his colleague was about these stories that had been going around. And the rabbi turned to the man who was very curious, and he said, true or not true, it really doesn't make a difference. You can't just share stories about people. That's not a good way to communicate. You're hurting your friend's reputation. And he said a lot more, and the man who had started the rumor felt really, really bad and sorry. And he asked the rabbi, "What can I do? What can I do to undo this? I'll do whatever you tell me. I want to undo this." And so the rabbi says, "Do you have any pillows at your house?" And he says, "Yes. What do you want me to do?" And he says, "Come here, bring me a pillow back to my office." And so the guy comes back to the rabbi with the pillow, and the rabbi says, "Cut it open." And the man is like, "What, Rabbi? Why would I do that?" And so the man cuts the pillow open, despite his better judgment, and all of these feathers come flying out. And the rabbi has the window in his office open. It's a beautiful day. The feathers are flying everywhere. And so the rabbi waited a few minutes, and he said to the man, "Now pick up all the feathers and put them back in your pillow, and not a single one can be missing." And the man says to the rabbi, "I can't do that. That's not possible." And so the rabbi said, Of course, that is exactly how it is with rumors. You can never take them back, just like the feather. It flies on the wings of the wind, he said. And so he ordered the man to apologize to his friend, and he did. But I want to share something with you that a mentor of mine used to ask herself before speaking. She would say, is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? So we are all imperfect people. We make mistakes. But this might help us to guide the way we talk to and about each other, just like the man learned from the feathers in the pillow. So thank you, folks, for listening, and let's sing you to your classes.
This morning, the offertory statement is by Kayla Parker. We know that our financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work. We are so grateful for this and commit together to ensure the funds we gather collectively do a greater good for ourselves and our world than they could have done alone. May there be an offering to sustain and grow the life and mission of this congregation. May we give in love and hope. The offering will now joyfully be given and received.
Tall like a tree.
first reading this morning is A Ritual to Read to Each Other by William E. Stafford. If you know the kind of person I am, what if you don't know the kind of person I am? And I don't know the kind of person you are. A pattern that others made may prevail in the world. And following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, the shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible errors of childhood, storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade, holding each elephant's tail, but if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs, but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, something shadowy, a remote, important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no, or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep.
We come now to the time in our worship service that we set aside for meditation and prayer. We'll have a time of shared silence, hold in our heart the joys and sorrows of our community, have a shared prayer, and then join in our response. I invite us to join now in a time of silence. We hold the unspoken joys and sorrows of this community in the silence of our hearts. Our prayer this morning comes from the writings of the Reverend Kristen Schmidt. She writes, "Breath of life, moving in and out, around and among us, for one more day to breathe the precious air of life, for all that's transpired to bring us here today, for the many gifts and blessings we enjoy, each and all we give thanks. It's often said that rather than looking for the perfect place or time, we are called to bloom where we've been planted. For there are no perfect places or times. There is only here and now. As we each do our best to live good and generous lives in an ever-complicated and precarious world, as this congregation does its best to live into the purpose we've been called to serve, help us keep things simple. Help us remember that the most important time is always now. The most important people are the ones we are with, the ones we've been planted near. That the most important thing is for us to do good. These and all the things we pray in the name of all that we deem holy. May it be so. Amen. I invite us now to remain seated and join in our response. It's number 391, Voice Still and Small. So we have a second story this morning. This one is for the grown-ups, and it's also about communication in a different way. And this is called The Demanding Tree. This is a rewrite of The Giving Tree by the Reverend Victoria Weinstein. She says, with apologies to Shel Silverstein. So she begins. Once there was a tree, and she loved a little boy. And every day the boy would come, and he would gather her leaves and make them into crowns and play king of the forest. And the tree loved the little boy, but the tree was kind of irritated. King of the forest? Where did these human beings get such an attitude problem? Time went by, and the boy grew older, and the tree was often alone, which was nice and quiet, but she missed the boy. Then one day, the boy came to the tree, and the tree called out to him, come climb up my trunk and swing from my branches, eat my apples and play in my shade and be happy. I am too big to climb and play, said the boy. I want to buy things and have fun. I want money. Can you give me money? No, said the tree. I only have leaves and apples. Why don't you get a job if money's so important to you? I hear the Nature Conservancy is looking for staff. Why don't you apply? And so the boy applied, and he stuffed envelopes and encouraged paperwork reduction and processed donations, and the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away for a long time, and the tree was sad. And then one day, the boy came back, and the tree shook with joy, and she said, "What took you so long? You don't call, you don't write. How's the job?" I'm too busy to talk with you, said the boy. I want a house to keep me warm. I want a partner. I want children. I need a house. Can you give me a house? Of course I can't give you a house, replied the tree. The forest is my house. But you're certainly welcome to pitch a tent on the ground here, and we'll have a great time. Thanks, but no thanks, tree, said the boy. Maybe I'll have to start a community with some of my friends. Okay, said the tree, you Americans already have far too many houses. Why build another? And so the boy went and he started a co-op with a group of people, and they lived simply, and they went to the UU church, and the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away for a very long time, And when he came back, the tree was so happy she waved her branches excitedly. Well, would you look at that? Look at you, boy. You look awful. You humans do not age well. You've got that right, tree, replied the boy. I wish I could stay and talk with you, but I'm too old and sad. I want a boat that will take me far away from here. Can you give me a boat? Whoa, said the tree. I don't like the way you're looking at my trunk. You want to get away from here? You've got legs. Walk. And on the way, take some seeds. Plant more trees. It'll do us all some good. And so the boy embraced the tree, took the seeds, and started on his journey. And the tree was happy, really. After a long, long time, the boy came back again. I'm sorry, boy, said the tree. You have no more teeth to sink into my apples. You're too fragile to swing in my branches. Your friends and your community are long gone, and your old legs can't take you around as they used to. We both know that you are at the end of your story, and that I will long outlast you. I just wish that I could give you something to comfort you. I don't need very much, said the boy, just a quiet place to swing and rest. Well, said the tree, straightening herself up as much as she could, this tree is good for swinging and resting. Come, tie your hammock on this branch over here and on this branch over here. Come, swing from my arms and rest. And the boy did, and the tree was very happy. We as human beings who are relational, whose lives are bound up with others, are asked regularly to make choices. We make choices about our attention, our time, our money. In life, people are always asking us for our help with this or with that, and it's up to us to decide how to respond. And for some of us, what to say yes to and what to say no to is fairly easy, intuitive. But for others of us, it may be more difficult. We may feel anxious that if we say no, that person will be mad at us, or somehow will no longer value our friendship. For many of us, we have been raised with the idea that you are expected to say yes to helping others, that you say yes no matter the cost. Oftentimes, folks who live in the world as women are socialized to say yes more than no. We're afraid of hurting another's feelings. My colleague Chloe Bredet also points out that comfortability with saying no is regional. She recently read an article that describes the difference between askers and guessers. And the article asserts that askers are usually coastal types and guessers are Midwesterners, which I guess can leave us in the South and maybe both places. So here's how the article from Amber Leventree describes the difference. Askers believe that it's okay to ask for anything, but usually understand that the answer could be no. Yes, there can be feelings of rejection and disappointment, but the asker anticipates those possibilities. Askers are usually able and willing to say no when someone asks them a question. For askers, the no is easier to both hear and to say. To a guesser, askers might seem rude or invasive because guessers would never put someone in the position of having to say no. Why would you make someone feel bad if they couldn't do the thing you needed or wanted? Instead, guessers can rely on subtlety, context clues to get what they want by waiting for someone to offer rather than just asking. To an asker, guessers may seem passive-aggressive or incomprehensible in their subtlety. And so this is all to say that your answers may be harder or easier depending on who you are and the culture that you come from. So lately, I think many of us have heard quite a bit about boundaries in our society, but it is taken almost for granted that we know what they are or how to set them. And I have come to see that our social location and even our age and the generation at which we came of age can have a major impact on our ability to understand boundaries. So the explanation that I have heard cited the most comes from the movie Dirty Dancing. So if you haven't seen it in a while, here's the scene. So we have Johnny and we have Baby, and they're practicing their routine. And Johnny is a professional dancer, right? He's been doing this for quite a while. And so he's getting really frustrated with Baby, who is standing in for someone, doesn't really know what she's doing, because she's not holding up her arms. He calls her spaghetti arms, and she's in his space, right? And so he finally goes, "This is my space, and this is your space, and you have to hold your arms up, and you hold the frame." So you hold the frame. Boundaries are about what's mine and what's yours, and they give us a framework as we move through life. Writer, therapist, and political organizer Prentice Hemphill writes, "Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously." In other words, a boundary is about when you might need to say no or not right now, so that you can open yourself to a yes somewhere else. The Reverend Jake Morrill recently published a book on boundaries, and he describes boundaries as our right and responsibility to define what is and isn't acceptable within us. Boundaries are the intentional choices we make to define ourselves. They say, this is mine, that is not mine. This is what I will be responsible for, and this is what I won't be responsible for. And we heard this same idea earlier in Victoria Weinstein's retelling of the giving tree. In the original story, the tree gives and gives and gives until there's almost nothing left. And some of us, in various phases of our lives, have probably been like that tree, running ourselves into the ground, giving everything we had, without a thought of saying no, without a thought toward caring for our own selves for whatever reason. Maybe it didn't feel safe to say no. Maybe no one ever taught us how. And the thought of any of you like that hurts my heart. Maybe no one ever told you that it is sometimes more loving to do what we can for others with joy than to do everything possible to overfunction so much that it breeds resentment within us. To say no can really be an act of care. And in the reframing of the story, the tree knows what she can and can't do. And she communicates that openly and directly. This is our task, to learn where our limits are and to communicate them. It may be difficult at first, but over time, it gets easier. We remind ourselves that to be clear and to be honest is to be kind. And we all have limits on what we can offer to others and to the world. We are human beings, and we can only do so much. While we've talked a lot about call and calling together this year, this is also where judgment and discernment comes into play, because you can't answer every call. So you have to practice some way of knowing where our big soul yearnings are and where the things are that we can let go, at least for now. To be able to adequately discern boundaries, we also need to have an understanding of who we are. We need to do some work on what's called self-differentiation. Robert Masters writes, "We cannot hope to mature and find true integration without first being clearly differentiated, vividly and unmistakably outlined. Good boundaries provide and support this essential differentiation in our lives." The Bowen Center for the Study of the Family says that folks with a poorly differentiated self depend so much on the acceptance and approval of others that they either quickly adjust everything they think and say and do to please other people, or they kind of dogmatically proclaim what other people should be like and pressure them to conform. And so, to be very clear, none of this is a judgment call. These are emotional and spiritual skills that I think all people need in order to live in this world, and they are things that we are all working on all the time. The Reverend Carl Gregg touches on this too in his writing on boundaries and family systems. And he says, to begin, childhood creating our current reality is related to what I call survival mode. When we're under stress, our human tendency is to revert to maladaptive habitual behaviors rooted in the families that we grew up in and in our traumas from the past. The psychologist Carl Jung said it this way in a sentence that has stuck with me even since: "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That is very heavy. And what can often remain unconscious for us while powerfully shaping our reactions are aspects of our family systems we experienced in childhood. And so I'd add to this, congregations work like families, and therefore we function as a family system. And for some of us, in our families of origin, we may have been taught, either outright or inadvertently, that it was our job, for whatever reason, to make other people happy, to please others, to always say yes. And this can have an impact on how we move through the world as adults, even many years later, when we have come to realize that that dynamic wasn't really healthy. We may find ourselves subconsciously very anxious, afraid to say no, find ourselves trying to gain approval from people who aren't really looking to give it. So on the other hand, when we do develop a sense of self-differentiation, we're able to listen and hear others, but we remain calm in the face of conflict. We're able to distinguish facts from emotions. Decision-making is guided by values in a self-differentiated person. And this is something that we need to continually try to work on throughout our life. The Reverend Carl Gregg goes on to say, part of what we can do is become more aware of these patterns so that we can make more intentional choices. Even just to increase our awareness can be a powerful step in interrupting, unhooking ourselves, opening up to the possibility for more free, generous, and compassionate responses to our lives, to our experiences of reality. And what he appreciates about this sort of perspective is that it can be empowering. There's a saying that we don't experience the world simply as it is. We experience the world as we are. And we can each really play a role in co-creating our experience of reality. But the other thing that he adds to that, and I think this is really important, is that not everything is in our control. Regardless of what's happening in the world, there are transformative steps available on the individual level to change our experience of ourselves and the world. But we also have to acknowledge that systemic oppression exists, right? And we have to continue to do work to dismantle those systems. So both things can be true. During the pandemic, I began following Casey Davis, or Domestic Blisters, on TikTok. I think all of my millennial folks are not here today, so it might just only be talking to me, but this is worth mentioning. So mainly she talks about care tasks and neurodivergence, but she also talks a lot about boundaries, reminding us that setting boundaries is about what you can control. And so, for example, saying something like, you can't do that, or you can't say that, that's not a boundary, because we, in fact, cannot control what other people do or say, much as we might like to. That's not in our space, right? But we can say, if you choose to say those kind of things in my presence, I might have to leave. Because we can control our own selves, right? It's about what we can be responsible for, what's in our space. My colleague, the Reverend Joanna Fontaine Crawford, says, boundaries aren't boundaries without consequences. They're just wishes. So one thing that I've wondered for a while is about boundaries in Unitarian Universalism, and a faith with many open-ended aspects. Where are the boundaries drawn? And the Reverend Joan Javier Duval shares this. The psychologist M. Scott Peck provides a definition of love in his book, The Road Less Traveled. He defines love as the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. And this definition gives both direction and purpose to our understanding of love. There is an outward movement to it as choice and effort are exerted, and its purpose is spiritual growth, which I take to mean the movement towards greater well-being and wisdom in body, mind, and spirit. With this understanding of love in mind, it's important to point out that the boundless love of Unitarian Universalism cannot exist without boundaries. If we extend ourselves without limits, we are likely to feel depleted over time. There is an art to the practice of love that supports us in giving freely and generously of our love within our capacities and in balance with our own needs. And I think we can also all recognize that love is often companioned by pain. We are humanly imperfect in how we express love, and we are likely to hurt and to be hurt by others in the human endeavor of love. And this is true in our most intimate relationships of family, friendship, and romance, and it's true in church as well. Because of this likelihood of causing pain in relationships of love, we recognize another boundary that we put on love, the boundary of accountability, when we do not live up to our aspirations and when we cause harm to others. Accountability is a practice we never finish or cross off our list. So some may know and others may not, but when a minister leaves a congregation, whether they have been here 2 years or 20, there are boundaries around leaving. And that means that towards the end of June, we will have a scheduled goodbye gathering. And if you want to set up a time to meet and talk privately with me, I'm happy to do that too. But after that time, you and I won't be in communication. I won't reach out to you, and you won't reach out to me. And some folks have said that to them this feels harsh. They don't understand this. And while I can empathize, let me say this. These boundaries are in place to help build relationships. If you were still having a relationship with me as minister, how would you be able to see whoever comes next as your minister too? This is about allowing the next person to come in and to love you in a way that may be different than mine, and for you all to do new things together, different than what we have done, and for you all to grow together beyond what you and I could do. It is not because we as ministers stop caring as soon as we leave. It is in fact because we continue caring that we practice the discipline of holding boundaries. As a colleague once described it, you fall in love and you walk away. And I have also seen what can happen when these boundaries are not respected, both by ministers and members of congregations. And I can tell you that it has led to many hurt feelings, quite a bit of harm, both to individuals and to the system of the church as a whole. I have left congregations before, and so let me assure you that the love doesn't stop. It just becomes different. From time to time, I will have folks from other churches that I've served cross my mind. And for one reason or another, when that happens, I will send a prayer of well-being and well wishes to them, wherever they are, and move forward fondly, knowing that it was a gift to know them for a short time. This is also why good goodbyes are important. It is a chance to say what you need to say. And so outside of what's required by our professional organization, different people have different boundaries and different ministers have different boundaries. Don't expect someone to teach the same way, to preach the same way, to be willing to hug, to do ministry the same way that I do. Holding these expectations consciously or maybe more often subconsciously sets us up for failure and can cause us to miss out on the wonder of a new relationship. And so as we close our time together, let us remember that setting and communicating our limitations is part of how we function as healthy people in this world. It honors the sacredness of our own being to acknowledge all that we can and cannot do. It is a way of caring for our spirits. So I wonder, where in your life do you feel a sense of energy right now that is giving you purpose, that feels good and exciting? That might be a place to move toward. And where in your life do you feel drained, burnt out, maybe even resentful? Where might you need to say no? Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. So may it be so. Amen. I invite us to rise, either in body or in spirit, and join in singing our closing hymn, Let It Be a Dance.
Let
we extinguish this flame, but not our commitment to welcome radically, love boldly, grow spiritually, and serve courageously. This we do because of our vision. We envision a beloved community filled with compassion, helping to thrive in a just world.
Folks, I invite you to join hands now as you're comfortable. My prayer for you as we go forth from our time together is that you learn to hold the frame for this dance that we do together. Go in peace.